It's hard to believe 4 days ago there was actually snow on the ground. Here we are experiencing record warmth. It's an absolutely gorgeous November day. A perfect day to not drive a crossover. BMW, you know, competition and motorsport. The M340i, it splits the difference between a regular 3 Series and the M3. Over here, a pretender to the throne. Why don't you tell me a little bit about it, Nick?
Well, I'm not sure I'd call the Genesis G70 a pretender to the throne, because if you asked me this question 2 years ago when the G70 first launched, I'd say it's the next best thing since sliced bread. Now, in that time, the 3 Series has no doubt caught up, and you know, maybe it's the dynamically superior sports sedan.
It's whether it's worth that rather huge gap in price.
Well, old dude, there's only one way to find out. Stop it. Well, here we are in the Genesis G70. It's very nice inside. As far as interior quality goes, in terms of fit and finish, the Genesis G70 isn't any worse than the M340i. They're pretty much on par. You do get a few more bells and whistles in the G70 than you do in the M340i. At $58,000, fully loaded, no options, because there are no options to select because this is fully loaded. The G70 has adaptive cruise control and cooled seats, 2 features that are missing from the more expensive BMWs. It proves that in terms of outright value, it is really, really hard, if not impossible, to beat Genesis /Hyundai/Kia. That being said, the interior isn't perfect. The driving position is spot on. Visibility is great. You can see there are no blind spots or anything like that. And there's more than enough room for the driver and front passenger. But the back seat is impossibly tight. If you're on the taller side, if you're like over 6 feet tall, it's useless. It's completely useless in this thing. The M340i does have a bigger trunk than the G70, but you know, we're just splitting hairs at this point. Bottom line, if you need a back seat, you're going to have to look elsewhere. Which is a shame, because the G70 is such a fantastic car otherwise. The other thing I wish Genesis did a little differently is sort of differentiate the G70 from lesser Hyundai models, chiefly with the infotainment system. It's a great system. Graphics are clear, very easy to use, but it's basically the same system you would get in a $20,000 Elantra in terms of graphics, except you're dropping 60 grand on this thing. The other thing that's also missing that the competition has, but the G70 doesn't, is an all-digital instrument cluster. Right now you have 2 analog gauges plus a little digital display in between those. But Genesis is fixing that with the G70 refresh due out next year. Under the hood of the fully loaded 3.3T, as the badge suggests, it has a 3.3 liter twin turbo V6. That is good for 365 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque. And that's hooked up to a really smooth 8-speed automatic transmission. It's a little on the quiet side, especially compared to the M340i, but it has plenty of kick. But of course, it isn't all about the engine or how loud your car is. Other things are important, like steering and chassis tuning. By and large, the G70 is pretty tight. It's also light. It handles extremely well. The steering is quite responsive, maybe a little bit down on feedback, but it's very well weighted, and there's very, very little body roll and a lot of grip thanks to the all-wheel drive system. Technically for 2020, you can still get a rear-wheel drive G70 in Canada, but it's with a 4-cylinder. Now, granted, it also has a stick, which is unheard of in the segment, but that option is going away when the refreshed G70 comes out next year. And that sucks because rear-wheel drive is fun. Not everyone needs all-wheel drive, so come on, Genesis. Why can't you just let us Canadians have fun and get get the V6 twin-turbo G70 with rear-wheel drive. But there's no reason to go for pretty much anything else in this segment over a G70. For $58,000, you get a lot. And the only option you have is pretty much what color you want.
Nothing like the sound of a turbocharged inline six-cylinder engine. And what I'm driving is a 2020 BMW M340i xDrive. Under the hood of this M340i, turbocharged three-cylinder engine, 382 horsepower, 376 pound-feet of torque. Naturally, it slots between the M3 on the performance scale and the 3 Series down on the, well, 3 Series scale. It might not be a full M3, but it has a lot of M performance parts. Suspension, rear differential. Personally, there's very little to dislike about this vehicle. The one thing I might complain about, ride. As a passenger, you might get a little tired. The ride can get a little flinty, especially in Sport and Sport Plus mode. Even Eco. For day-to-day operation, I keep it in comfort mode. You really don't lose much of the performance aspect. Well, you maybe in handling. But it's an easier ride. Still firm, but not flinty. Our as-tested price is a little bit of a guess. Base price of an M340i xDrive, $62,100. This is about another $10,000 between options and packages. I mean, it's got an individual color, not standard. It's got 20-inch tires, not standard. Actually, not even an option. Pirellis, P0s, 225/35s up front, 255/30s at the back. A lot of grip. I'd complain a little bit about the steering. It's very heavily weighted, a bit numb on center. To be fair though, once you get on the throttle, once you get into the curves, the car just goes where it's pointed. I really like the Genesis G70. It is a first-class effort by a company that's still trying to find its way, still trying to find an audience. And if it was just about performance, you can make a valid point about the G70 because, frankly, it's $14,000 to $15,000 less expensive. But there's other considerations. Both of these are compact cars. This particular car has lovely seats, very comfortable, good for the long haul, a lot of stretch out room. Rear seat space, especially for somebody tall like myself, I can't get into the back seat of either. Fuel economy. Well, I mean, you're not going to buy sports sedans for the fuel economy, but the BMW is significantly less fuel piggish on the highway and in the city. We're not talking a couple of tenths, we're talking 1 to 2 liters per 100 kilometers. That's significant. The car is very well equipped. It hasn't got a sunroof, but it's got a 360 camera. It's got the backup stuff. Got everything you really want in a car. Probably more. Something to be said for simple.
When the G70 first launched in 2018, it turned the sports sedan segment on its head. 2 years later, that luster kind of wore off just a little bit, but it's still a fantastic overall package.
Yes, it is, especially for the price. I mean, it's all in at $58,000, and credit where credit's due. It is a lovely driving car, but it's not the ultimate performance car. And there's a few things beyond that that are in the BMW's favor.
There's no denying that the latest M340i is much improved over its predecessor. Is it $15,000 better than the Genesis? That's a lot of money.
Now, the brand snobs will say yes. They'll say there's no equity in the Genesis. That's a little harsh. But when you get somebody who drives a BMW or any other European sports sedan into a Genesis, I think it's a lot harder than trying to get somebody who is younger, who grew up driving Japanese cars, who looks for an aspirational brand that doesn't necessarily have the snobbery of a BMW.
There is no denying that the 3 Series is the superior sports sedan, but over anything else in this segment, the Genesis takes it.
Not just the 3 Series, the M340i xDrive. For Driving.ca, I'm Brian Harper.
And I'm Nick Trejanis. And before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And check us out at Driving.ca for more Genesis and BMW news and reviews.